Mr. Maximilian, don't you think that this is a really strong statement said by Mr. Hussein that anyone joining NATO now is not really beneficial? How can you say about this?
I would strongly disagree. I do think that there's a strong argument that NATO is perhaps better reconstructed somewhat, or at least reconfigured. But it's quite clear that countries that don't have these kind of security guarantees, such as Ukraine, are at the mercy of unilateral aggression by countries that seek to change borders. This is something that applies not only in Ukraine and in Eastern Europe, where countries such as Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Putin has given up his former irredentist claims against these, which have joined NATO, but also which we see in South Asia, for example, with China's attempts to redraw the borders with Taiwan, or even in North Africa with Morocco and the Western Sahara. I think it's quite clear that friends are able to give countries and territories security guarantees that decrease the risks of war. Yes, there is truth that NATO is a Cold War institution, and that often when these very large defensive pacts come about, such as we saw with NATO and the Warsaw Pact, rather than go to war against one another, they fight proxy conflicts, as again North Africa experienced a number of. But I think it's quite clear that yes, perhaps there's overdue for an updating of NATO, but it's very clear that mutual defense and communal defense is something that works, and that not only is useful in terms of responding to conflicts, as we saw, for example, after 9/11, the one time that Article 5 of NATO has been invoked, but also, more importantly, in deterring them. So by having these kind of alliances, you make war less likely.
I beg your pardon, Mr. Maximilian, by saying that NATO, wherever they enter, they make the situation even worse. Now, it's been years and years of the Sahrawi situation, but yet there is no solution. So I believe that Mr. Hussein has a strong argument to say that no one is really beneficial from NATO. Mr. Oleksiy, do you agree or disagree with the situation right now?
If we are looking at the Ukrainian situation, NATO now, it's not a good way for the Ukraine, because now we see situations that some Ukrainian problems, it's a problems because NATO not join Ukraine maybe in the past, and also NATO simulate maybe, in some positions that the way to open for Ukraine, some glass door for Ukraine, but without real join. And in Ukraine, it's some problem because now Russia to use this situation against Ukraine, and this war Russia against Ukraine, in some aspect it connects with the situation about the NATO, about the not join NATO for Ukraine maybe in 2008, because some position of the France, Angela Merkel and Germany, against Ukrainian join to the NATO in the past. And this situation now for the Ukraine now it's a problem, because in Ukrainian constitution, past president Petro Poroshenko to sign that Ukraine has some Euro-Atlantic aiming, and it's a problem because from the Russia in the negotiate now we hear about the neutral status for Ukraine, not NATO, but neutral status. And the past power in Ukraine, past authority of the Ukrainian authority, Petro Poroshenko and his parties, they did not realize some referendum about the NATO, because some opposition politics, for example, Yuri Boyko, they talking about the referendum, but in Ukrainian constitution, NATO adopt without a referendum.